Hi, Brendan. How are you?
Good.
Good, good. So, yeah, I've just finished watching your movie. Very, very
All right.
good work, by the way.
Thanks.
How's the weekend treating you? I keep thinking it's Sunday for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's good. Weekend's good so far. Apart from my Apple TV is crashing, but yeah.
Oh no, is that the app, or is that just? Do you think Apple TV side of things is just misbehaving
But
and
no, no, you know what it is? I don't have a games console and I bought a controller for it and I play some games through it and it's not the best. So there's a game I'm playing called The Pathless and that's just crashed and I don't know how to reboot or restart. So I've been spending the last hour trying to get this app to restart. I'll get it. I'll get it
you
fixed.
will? It's a puzzle.
Yeah.
I've spent my nearly said Sunday morning there. I will never get used to the fact it's a Saturday. I've spent part of my Saturday morning watching The Cellar,
Okay.
which was
Yeah.
good. So,
Okay.
having watched that film, maybe your app crashing is something connected with the powers that be in the cellar. You never know.
Yeah.
It is a possibility. So, I
I
was,
see. I see you've got the woman and Darling on the walls behind you there. It's signed as well, is it?
yeah, the picture of the painting of Polly is signed by Lucky McKee and Vanessa McKee, who did the artwork, whereas the
Yeah,
Darling poster is signed by Polly herself.
I
Um,
know her. She's living here in Ireland at the moment, so I was out with her there recently. Actually, I caught COVID the night I went out with her.
oh
But
no.
yeah, I know. I was a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, she's great,
Yeah.
Pollyanna. She's brilliant.
Cheers. I saw the woman around. I kept hearing people talking about the film The Woman on podcast in like 2012, and I thought, right, I need to check this film out. And I watched it. It blew me away. And ever since then, I've been following lots of Polly's films. Exam, Love Eternal,
I
which
love
you
Eternal.
made, which you
Yeah,
made. And I had the sort of pleasure of actually finally meeting her a couple of years ago at Grimmfest. So that was great because we swapped tweets for years. We're Twitter buddies and stuff like that. So it was really nice to actually sit
amazing. Yeah.
down and she gave me a bottle of water. Go ahead, I've got you a bottle of water. I still have that bottle of water. I never opened it. I have it in my. So,
Probably you wouldn't want to drink that. Yeah.
no, I don't think I'll drink it after 3 years of sitting in a box.
Oh,
But it's like, do you know what? I'm having that. But I saw her at the premiere of Darling, so that's when we sort of met up and stuff. But
yeah.
the seller, I was reading one review this morning, and firstly, I disagree with the review, and I'll tell you why. The review was positive, as well it should be, so I agree with that part. But there was one line in it that said, the seller doesn't bring anything new to the genre. Now, firstly, I disagree with that line because there are things in the cellar that I haven't seen in haunted house movies ever. So, but let's say I did believe that line. It's not always a bad
I'm
thing.
okay with that
It's
though.
not it's
I'm
not a bad
actually okay
thing.
with that.
It's not.
No.
I don't think it's a bad
It's like a
thing.
comfortable pair of shoes. I mean, that like
Yeah.
in a way, I sort of know the type of film I was making, and in a way, it was like it's. I have to say this all the time that there's a spectrum in horror, and I love the films on the darker, more transgressive end, but I also enjoy the films that are more fairground ride, theme park. I
Mhm.
sort of enjoyed them as well, so I sort of know where I was pitching this movie, or this film. So you got to excuse me. I'm saying movie all the time, but it's because I've been talking to Americans for the last 3 weeks, doing a lot of press, and it's movie this, movie that with
Yeah, it's fine.
in the states.
Unless you start calling it comic book or graphic novel or something, which would really confuse me. Movie's fine, but I like the familiarity, and there are quite a few. To use the word trademark, maybe to use a word, there are quite a few trademarks in the cellar which I just absolutely adored. It's like the kid with a bouncy ball, and like, I wonder if Brendan's seen The Changeling, which is one of my most favorite haunted house movies ever,
Yeah,
and that's got a very
you know,
scary bouncy ball in it.
yeah, and the funny thing about that is that was probably subconscious, the coming down the stairs bit. But in a way, we do our own thing with the ball. The ball is set up earlier in its own way and does its own thing, which is not used before, because our sort of dimensionless sort of cellar is its own thing. So, but then when it finally reappears at the end, yes, someone mentioned the changeling to me, so I went, "Oh yeah, I've seen the changeling," and I said, I must look it up," and I went to YouTube, looked it up, and up popped the first video popped up was the 30 scariest bouncing balls in horror movies.
Yeah,
So there's like someone made a video with 30 separate scenes of balls coming downstairs.
yeah.
So it's well used, all right.
Need to update that list to the 31 scary
Yeah,
films, because it
it's
genuinely
true.
was. I found The Cellar massively atmospheric. I mean, I have watched it at home, but I watched it on a pretty big, like a 40-inch computer monitor, headphones on, because the sound design in The Cellar is a character on its own, I think.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's not much I can say except for like I really do understand how important sound design is. I treat it as important as cinematography, and but it has its own place in the process because you write, then you make the film on, then you edit, and then there's my favorite part is when I'm doing the sound, the grade, the titles, the sort of polishing of it all, because I've got a lot of professionals around me who know their job and are bringing a lot to it, so the pressure is slightly off me, and yes, I'm able to then be creative and have lots of ideas. Now, in fairness, lots of it was written in the script. Like the way I wrote this script was, I would, a door. I might write the door opens slowly, and I would go to the next line, and just in capital letters, I would just go creak, then go to the next line for a bit of action. So I was putting in anything I thought was important in terms of, and it was not necessarily like reminding me or the sound team, it would be nearly so that the read was good for a reader,
Mm.
reading the script. But I suppose what I'm saying is yeah, look, sound, and I've worked with those guys before. My last film, Pilgrimage, so they're a Belgian sound team. So, and they're fantastic. They're really good.
But it was, and I'm not going to get into spoilers because I never, even in reviews, I never get into spoilers because I love the fact watching a film for the first time, you don't know what's going to happen and you can't replicate that. I'm not a fan of these reviews that go, oh, the film's about this, because it sort of builds up a pre, a pre-image of what I'm about to watch. So I'm just put a film on, press play, and experience whatever sort of film it is. Even the very beginning of the film, which is just production logos coming up, the sound design and the score over that was instantly putting me on edge. Which there's not many films where the production logos put me on edge, but I may have
Yeah,
to do a list of films and that
well,
goes on it.
it's interesting. I can't remember at what stage of the process with the composer, but there was a point where, and we've sort of used these before in my very first feature as well, but these sort of very low bassy booms, like boom, slow booms, like a sort of like a slow beating drum, but it's just under under everything. And it's obviously, if you've headphones on, you're going to get it. You're
Hmm.
going to hear them, So, or in a cinema with good sound system. But there's nothing like creating anxiety than that. This slow beating, booming drum that it just sounds like something's coming. If something is not good. So yeah, that I think I mean, I had a whole opening sequence planned, but because of COVID and everything, we were
Yeah.
under pressure even to shoot some of it. The steps, moving up the steps, was in there. In fact, what I wanted to do was to move from deep underground, and you've seen the film, so I won't spoil it, but
Hmm.
for anyone else. But I wanted to come from where we end up, but more abstract, just moving along things. I wanted to move along walls and tunnels and stone, and then to come up the steps and into the house. So it was nearly like just coming up into the house instead of starting outside the house as you would normally start, or in the car with the family arriving. I wanted to start it deep inside, but of course that didn't happen. So all I had was because of COVID, we didn't go out and do any pickups or anything. We did, normally we would go out and we'd shoot stuff, and towards the end of the edit, because you might even have scenes you want to reshoot or story problems that you need to fix and stuff. So like always shot a lot of pickups, not a lot, but I've definitely done pickups on all my films. And this time around we didn't. So that's why what you see is red production logos over a sort of smoky, very dark, smoky atmosphere. Really, is what we came up with. The red
But
is a sort of homage to Hammer.
mhm.
It's like the red logos. They're great.
But it works. It instantly sort of gives you a feeling of the type of film you think you're about to watch, and that does thankfully match up with the sort of film you are about to watch. The opening sort of dialogue made me feel old because somebody, referred to Elisha Cuthbert as mum, and I'm like, Mum, she's Kim out of 24. She can't be a mum, but yes, she can because
How long ago was 24?
24 started in 2001. So yes, you know, she can
Yeah,
be a mum, and she is a mum. But
it is a one.
she is an interesting casting for this sort of type of film. You wouldn't necessarily think, oh, it's a film in Ireland. You're like, oh, it's. How did you sort of come to connect with Alicia?
You know, I'm delighted we did because she was
Hmm.
brilliant and she was really nice to work with. Owen Mackin, who plays the other lead, Brian. I've known Owen for years. He was in my first feature film, Savage, smaller role, but he was in it, and so we've known him for years. The producers know him well. We all know him well. So it was, it was really nice to now be, because Owen's done his own thing. He's a a well-established actor now at this stage. So it was really nice to work with Owen. And then Owen's agent is the same agent as Alicia Cuthbert. So it was very easy just to get a script to her. Really, it was during COVID, so there was no face-to-face meetings. We did it on Zoom like this,
Yeah.
but she was just so easy to talk to. She anything I thought about with the character, she thought the same. She was ahead of me with, I didn't know how to say it to her that I thought she should dye her hair.
Yeah.
Alicia's normally blonde, and I just didn't think that would work for the character, and I didn't know how to get around to saying that to her. And she said it before before I got to it. She said I was thinking of dyeing my hair, and I was going, oh yeah, she knows what she knows what to do, so, and she's a great actress. And also, she was so supportive on set as well. And I've told this story before, but I'll say to you, it's like on the last day in the house, we were so much out of time that I was like half an hour over time, and I don't think I had any more time. And it was the end scene of the film. So you've seen that end scene where the whole family are in the hall and everything. And we were leaving the house that night and moving on, and they were striking the sets, and I wouldn't be able to go back and shoot there. So I knew I had to get this done, and I had and I wasn't looking for extra shots. I just needed the basics to tell the story. And I still was under so much pressure that I said, we're going to have to do these like one takes only. Like, we're just going to have to do one take, get it, move on to the next, which is really something you don't do. Like when I started, we were shooting on film, and you wouldn't do one take because the rushes, you wouldn't get them back for a week, and you could have like a scratch or a hair on the gate or something wrong with it. So you just would never do one. Now, obviously, you can look back, or you can see it in digital now. You can see what you're getting, but it's still highly risky to do one take because you might miss something small in the frame, or you generally, I try anyway in a low budget to do about 3 takes per shot. It's a good average. Sometimes you'll do more, sometimes you'll do 2 if it's a simple shot and you got it. But I was doing 1 takes, and because we were moving so fast, and actors would normally, or a lot of actors might sort of either freak out with you because you're putting them under pressure, or they might start fluffing lines because they feel under pressure, or they just, like it can just go wrong. And not only were they really calm and supportive, all of them, and just saying, don't worry, we got it. They also were nailing their lines first time, everything, there was no, so they were the most supportive cast I've ever worked with. They were brilliant.
Let's talk about the house, because the house has this wonderful. It's also another character
Yeah.
and by that I mean the exterior of the house. You look at it and you think, right now, I also know what sort of film I'm about to watch. I would put the house in the cellar on the same list as like Amityville, The Changeling, Bates Motel, if you want to really sort of expand the list. It has a very creepy, but not overly, oh my God, nobody'd live there. It perfectly balances that, wow, that's a nice looking house, to there's more to that house than meets the eye. Where did you find this location?
It was in Roscommon. We had to shoot in Roscommon because one of our financiers, our funders, is the RAP fund, which is, they sort of incentivize shooting in the west of Ireland. So you'll get extra cash for your film to shoot down there. I mean, there's pros and cons with that. Like, I had an advertising agency and I'm going to shoot in a small county in Ireland, but thankfully we got it. Actually, due to COVID, we got it because the county council offices where we shot were empty. No one working, everyone working from home. But there's about 10 stately homes, maybe of this type in the county, Roscommon. I was looking for a very specific thing. I wanted a long corridor leading to a door that could be a cellar. I knew we'd never get a house with a perfect cellar. I knew we had to build a set for the cellar. So all I was looking for was this hall and long corridor or hallway. And it was the only house I really found, but it was amazing as well. So it wasn't just that it was the only one I saw. it was amazing outside. Like you walked in and it was a big open hallway with an open staircase, and down the side of the staircase was this corridor. And I wouldn't say long, but it was a corridor. It led to a door into a dining room and another bit of a corridor. So the production designer said, "Look, we'll build our own we'll build our own cellar door. We put and in behind it we'll build a little sort of cloakroom so they can turn left, and then we pick them up in the set. You know, so you don't have to look straight down the house, though. You know, it's actually it's a guest house, a 5-star guest house. It's Clonallis House, and if you look at that online, just put Clonallis House in and you look it up, you'll see that we shot. I mean, it is the front door, but it's not the most impressive part of the house. The most impressive part of the house is to the side, and it is even more impressive than the part we used, but it just made it look too big. It looked like the family were moving into a hotel. But in terms of Gothic sort of architecture and impressive, you know, you're talking about these iconic houses from horror films. This one has it, and I really wanted to use it, but I just knew we shot it as well. We shot the side, but because the door they go in, it was confusing if you saw the other side as well, and it just looked too big. But it's interesting you say all these other films, because the short film that the feature is based on, you know, it's based on a short film called The 10 Steps, which I made in 2004. That was inspired by The Haunting, Robert Wise's The Haunting. And the very opening of The Haunting is literally Hill House, just, you know, silhouetted. And I did the exact same thing with the short film. I opened it literally as a homage to The Haunting. No one ever knew. There's a homage to The Haunting in the Cellar, actually. Quite a blatant one.
Would you care to share what it is, or would you rather people discover it for themselves?
No, I'm fine. It's when Kira hears her son locked in the cellar.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a similar sort of, it's not the exact same, but there's a similar moment in The Haunting when Eleanor, and I forget who the other character is, are in bed and it's dark, and Eleanor's going, hold my hand, and then she's saying, you're hurting my hand. And of course the lights come back on, and the other character's nowhere near her, you know. Yeah. So it's just terrifying. Who the hell was holding her hand? So I was sort of playing, but look, I'm playing with tropes in the film the whole time. There's like loads of tropes in there that I'm conscious of and I'm playing with, and there's obviously stuff in there that I was subconscious as well, you know.
But that's half the enjoyment. I think we sort of touched upon this at the beginning of the conversation. For me, that's half the enjoyment, is the familiarity in many ways of films. I watched the latest James Bond film, and you know what? James Bond films are pretty much the same story in every single Bond film. But I like them and I enjoy them, and I think I'd be shocked if the Bond film was different. You know, so I love the familiarity. You'd sort of mentioned a comfortable pair of shoes. I don't see that as a bad thing. I like that. I like a comfortable pair of shoes now and again when I'm sitting down, putting my feet up and being scared to go in my house cellar ever again. So one of my favourite scenes in the film involves a countdown and a staircase. That chilled me to the bone, that scene. I think, you know what, that's one of the many memories I'll take away of watching The Cellar, is the whole telephone conversation involving going down the stairs. And that's how...
Yeah, that's the short film. The short film starts with a character. I think she's Katie in the short, babysitting. The lights go out, and her mother. She calls. It's actually her father in the short, and it ends where you know where it ends. The short film, and it's a neat little 10-minute sort of sequence, you know. So it was really, that's what I expanded and tried to expand from. But yeah, I'm glad you found that, because that's, the short film was so successful for us, and it was basically what you're talking about there, the counting and the staircase, and it was very, very successful. It actually won Best Short at the Sitges Fantastic Film Festival in 2005, but it also won Best Short at the New York International Children's Film Festival in the same year. And it won many more children's festivals, and it went around the circuit, you know, Ravenna, Lund, I can't remember, but it won quite a few awards in the genre circuit. But you know, the fact that it was crossing between the children and the hardcore horror audiences was really unique. Now I have to say, I've never seen anything like that before.
Did it strike you as weird at the time? You're like, why is that a thing? And then you obviously became to embrace it, going, well, it is what it is.
Yes, and that's probably where, why I approached the feature in the same way, that I was trying to make it for all the family. I was trying to have no cursing, no gore, no, so that it could be, you could watch it. Like my 10-year-old daughter, she can't watch any of my films. She says, "What are they about?" And I go, "Oh God, I don't know where to start."
Can't tell you.
Yeah, because you've seen Love Eternal, right? So they're
Yeah.
like, that's fun. But Savage is fucking mental too. It's demented. And Pilgrimage is sort of, you know what? She could probably watch that. There's a lot of heads being split open and stuff. Like it is ultra violent, but it's an adventure film, really, I suppose, Pilgrimage. So, but
Mm.
this was really nice. She's 10 and she was able to watch it in the cinema. It was brilliant.
And what did you think of it? Obviously, she loves it because you made it, but as an experience, what was the feedback from her?
She likes it, but she maybe hasn't been as exposed to maybe a lot of the influences,
Right.
so to her it's brand new. But that's what I think about it is, it's like a perfect they call it gateway horror,
Mm.
for younger audiences that really they haven't seen the Beyond, or they haven't seen The Haunting, or I could go on. I mean, there's bits of everything in there, from Final Destination to, as I said, Fulci's Beyond to, there's just the Amityville Horror, I suppose, probably has. And I couldn't point you to a scene in it. I just know that, somewhere. I know that there's a secret room in the Amityville Horror that's red. And I had this little cupboard that they find the gramophone in was red at one stage. And then I went, oh yeah, I can't do that because that's straight out of the Amityville. So, um, but yeah, I mean, it's like yeah, she loved it. Yeah,
Now I'm going to sort of ask about Abby Fitz, who
yeah.
her filmography is quite short. So I'm
Mm.
guessing she's relatively newcomer to the screen. You couldn't tell. She was amazing. I mean, obviously, I'm going to go back to the cellar steps scene that
Yeah.
is just burned into my brain. But she was fantastic in the cellar. So let's talk about Abby.
Well, yeah, she won't be unknown. She's not like new for long, because she now has a really good agent, and she's doing a TV show at the moment, or feature. I don't know. She's doing a TV show and a feature, actually. She's got a lot of work. Abby, we had a brilliant casting director, Emma Gunnery, and it was COVID, so obviously tapes were coming into me, and I was watching tapes, and I was shortlisting the tapes. And maybe if you had two or three, you would do a Zoom like this, and they'd have maybe two pieces they'd do for you, and you might give them a bit of direction. Um, Abby very quickly just came to the front. I mean, look, I mean, it's a bit of a trick, but she is able to tap into her emotions, and get very emotional and teary very quickly. She's
Mm.
really got a skill for doing that. But yeah, Abby, look, and the same with Dylan. Sorry, yeah, Dylan Fitz. They're both Fitz. Abby Fitz, but her full name I think is Fitz Mars. Anyway, but they both came to me with tapes, and they both very very quickly rose to the top. Every when I'd shortlist them, they would then the last three might send another tape in, and their tapes were getting better, and then just with both of them as well, like giving them direction, they were able to take direction really well. So it was sort of obvious, really, that. And I think it's hard doing it through a Zoom, but in a way, talent does shine through in the end. So yeah, it was actually, I thought it was going to be a disaster, because I'm not used to doing auditions online, but actually worked out well.
Because I think that's obviously COVID's been attacking us for a couple of years now. Everybody figured it'd be 6 months and then it'll be fixed and done, but we're now into the third year, I'm guessing. So as a
Yeah.
filmmaker, obviously, I'm guessing it would have been difficult for you, not just the shooting, but also the casting and the production and stuff. But you've come through it wonderfully. Do you think the film is massively different than it would have been had you not had these restraints in? I don't think it would, because everything.
No, I think it mightn't. I think we mightn't have had as many lucky things. Look, obviously auditioning like that's not good. Having to test twice, three times a week's a pain. Wearing masks all day long is a pain. But we sort of went into a bubble. I stayed down there. I didn't see my family for 7 weeks. Well, they came at the very end, but they were there for. I was away for 7 weeks, just focusing on this. We were supposed to shoot in the summer, around May or June, just when COVID came in. So, and COVID locked us down, I think, in March. But you know, I would have been shooting in June, July, or June, and I don't know how much, you know, how much the sun is up, you know, how much nighttime you get. I can't shoot after 12 o'clock because it becomes this really expensive thing, night shoots. So, but I can shoot up till 12. Um, but you know, in June, how much darkness do you get? Very little.
Not a lot.
And you know, yeah, and by the time you set up lights and everything, you know, you'd get very little. So I would have had to have built tents, like big tents outside, if I wanted to have lights coming in the windows, which I did, because I wanted it to have a polished sort of, you know, for want of a better word, a sort of glossy Hollywood look, a little bit glossy, you know,
Yeah.
a not too sort of dingy a film. I wanted it to have a little bit of gloss to it. So I needed to put, you know, big lights out the windows and stuff. Um, so, you know, shooting in November, I was able to shoot 5 hours in daylight. Then we'd take a break as it was getting dark, and the break would be the hour dinner, lunch, whatever you'd call it, halfway through the day. And then I was able to come back and shoot 5 hours of night footage. So it was brilliant for that. Also, I said to you earlier that I wouldn't have been able to get a. We used Roscommon County Council because they were all working from home, and it was this futuristic building in Roscommon. The staircase in the, you know, in the advertising agency is like this silver sparkling staircase. The agency itself, the boardroom, um, the police station, the exterior of the police station, and then on the other side of the building was the exterior of the school. We literally shot everything around this one building, and we wouldn't have had the access to it if it wasn't for COVID. So, in fairness, I actually think that COVID worked out all right for us.
Yeah. And I think that's important. I mean, obviously, the pandemic is not a good thing, and nobody wishes it's happened. But I think it is important that we all find the positive things to do in the situation that we've kind of not got that much control over. So, and I spoke to a few filmmakers who have had similar experiences to you, where it's like, obviously, that's bad, but this enabled us to do X, Y, Z. So people are finding the positive things to come out of this
I mean,
crazy situation.
the thing is, like, it is, you know, it could have, I mean, I didn't think about it too much, but it could have been, you know, in a way frightening, because there was no vaccines at the time, when we were all at risk in a way. Um, and then, you know, as the edit though was done completely remotely.
Hmm.
We
And how?
didn't ever sit in a room together.
And
And
what was the sort of production time period then? So with the editing,
we shot
sorry to
November.
interrupt.
Yeah, we shot November, December. We took a break for Christmas. We came back. It was a little bit of a break because we were wondering, because the cases were through the roof here in Ireland, and it was a serious lockdown. So we just waited a bit to see, and then we realized we were going to have to start editing. So we took that time to work out this system. There's a thing called Evercast, and because the problem is when you're editing remotely is I'm watching the screen, and the sound is lagging behind the picture, and it's a pain. It's not in sync, so it's impossible. But Evercast obviously works in a way that it keeps the sync together. And I'm able to, what I love looking at when I'm with the editor is I like seeing the timeline and the two pictures, and I like seeing how Mairead's cutting, whether she's working on the sound, the track, you know, there's all the tracks laid out. And I like watching and understanding what's going on during the edit. So we were able to do that. That went for about, wasn't too long. It was about 3 months, maybe, the edit. And then it was just as the vaccines were coming in that I had to go to Belgium to do all the sound grading. And yeah, luckily enough, I got fully vaccinated just before I went to Belgium. So it really worked out very well, actually.
Good. Now, what is the plan? I read something online, so I think I know the answer to this one anyway. But what is the plan for the Cellar? So obviously, it's showing at Grimmfest next weekend, which is great. And I think anybody who's going, this will be online within the next day. So
Yeah.
a lot of Grimmfest people will see this. So I can't urge them enough to go watch this on the big screen, because it's definitely made for the huge
I'll
screen.
make sure it's loud. I'll make sure it's loud as well, because that's how to hear it. Well, look, it premiered in South by Southwest, the festival in Texas. It was great in the midnight section, along with actually T West's the X, it's called, yeah. So that was brilliant. It was released in cinemas here in Ireland on the 25th, so it's been out 3 weeks. It's Grimmfest, and then, in fact, the very day that it's screening in Grimmfest, it's been released on Shudder. So Shudder UK, US, and New Zealand, Australia. It's also going out theatrically in the States. And then I think after an exclusive period on Shudder, it's going to go out wide on iTunes in the States. I'm not sure about whether that will happen in the UK.
Yeah. So it's going everywhere, which is great. But because I saw the mention of it going onto Shudder the same day, and I'm like, oh, do I mention that, or do I say just not mention that and say go watch it at Grimmfest? But not everybody will be able to get to the actual screening in Grimmfest. So
and the whole point of coming to see it in the cinema is, trust me, like I go in and I do a sound check beforehand, and I don't think you'll ever hear it the way I go in and I make sure it's at a level where it is good. It really elevates the film just a notch or two better than it actually is, because it's powerful, the sound and the music, you know, and it is, as you pointed out at the very start, it is quite well done and well polished. So it's an experience in itself to experience the soundtrack and the sound design. Yeah.
It really is. I mean, I watch a lot of films. I probably watch maybe 300-400 a year or whatever. And I never know what I'm going to expect until obviously I press play, and the Cellar was an absolute joy to watch. It's one of those that I will revisit. So when it does come out to purchase, or I'll be watching it on Shudder probably next weekend, I have a wall projector downstairs with a Roku box, so I will be watching that on my huge wall, which is something I've been doing for the past couple of years because, you know, cinema's closed down for a while. But the bigger the better. It's rigged up to a huge sound bar, and I look forward to re-experiencing the Cellar again. But so one final question. So the Cellar is done. What is the one memory that you take away from it, where in like 10-15 years will sit and make you a big old smile?
You know, I'm probably not going to answer that correctly, but the first thing that popped into my head was we were shooting in these tunnels under Lough Key. These long tunnels. They used to be the servant tunnels to a big house that's now gone. The servants weren't allowed to come up the front door. They had to go into these dingy tunnels. But it was also, I think, used for other stuff. There's a pump room. It was near a lake, so they were obviously doing some sort of milling or something. So they're really creepy old tunnels. And there's like water dripping from the roof, and there's like signs up going, "Beware Veals disease" or "Wheels disease," and you just know, and it's freezing cold. And Alicia Cuthbert's there in a tank top, and she's as chirpy as anything. Well, she's still, and then there's bits of water dripping on her, and she looked at me, and I just said, "You'll laugh about this in 2 weeks." And she went, "Yeah," and she was like, she was grand. But yeah, I don't know why that popped into my head, but it was probably because it was a moment that I was marking in my mind at the time, and I said, "We'll look back on this, and we'll look at it fondly, even though right now it's miserable. We're shivering, it's smelly, the dirty water dripping on us and stuff like that." So yeah.
Good answer. I think you did answer that one right, so that's good. But congratulations to you. For what are you working on next? Are you busy, or are you having a little bit of a rest? Or
No. I teach here in the National Film School, but no, I'm writing a script that we really think is really, like, we're really excited. It's a revisionist folk horror about St. Patrick trying to convert a sect of druids. Okay. And it's, when I say like, and it's not like sort of action adventure, it is dark, mind-bending, ultra-violent, really mental stuff. Yeah. So we're really looking forward to it.
So this is one that your daughter can't sit down and watch for a few years yet, then? No, not happening.
This one is probably going to piss off a lot of people too, because, it's like the patron saint of Ireland, and as you've never seen him.
Oh, people never get annoyed watching movies. No, not at all. People are so chilled out in the past couple of years. They'll be fine.
Very Whitehead.
They'll be fine, exactly. But no, thank you very much for making the Cellar, and obviously thanks for taking some time out to have a conversation as well. It's been an absolute blast, and I'm sure everybody at Grimmfest will love it. I did, and I will now let you go and try and sort your game out so you can get some relaxing time. Nice. Go to Twitter and ask them if you're a little bit stuck or whatever. Just go ask them. Somebody will help, hopefully. But you enjoy the rest of your day, Brendan.
Yeah, same to you. All right, thanks very much.
Take care.
Bye bye.